Welcome to Fast Pace, the new growth, leadership and management podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Dean Mackie. We wanted to peel back the layers on what happens in the world of fast-paced real estate agencies, from new leadership models to the management challenges we all face each day. This is about a new era in the estate agency sector. Rapid changes to business models, service lines, remuneration and growth present the greatest opportunities that we've ever seen. Sit back, get inspired, grow your skills and reimagine what's possible with Fast Pace. Every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Josh Phegan Digital. The corporate calendar is a really important part of any business. And Dean, this really comes back down to great planning. One of the things that I've noticed in training is that, sure, we've got all the training stuff and when we do the events and how all that sort of works out, and you work out what works during the course of the year and where the friction points may be. But a corporate calendar is also too about understanding the mood that people naturally go through. And Dean, we're in this position that naturally every year I kind of get people go, oh my goodness, is it spring next week? Oh wow, geez, that's come really quickly. It was coming at the speed all year. And next year, for example, we've got some crazy stuff happening with an early Easter at the end of March, 1 or 2 weeks, then some school holidays, and then you've then got Anzac Day. And so naturally, if you're not really clear and you're not launching properties until after Australia Day, all of a sudden you've only got maybe 3 or 4 auction dates to try to do an entire quarter's worth of numbers. That could be disastrous on the inside of a business that hasn't actually got it well planned. So Dean, I think that there are events that happen every year. So for example, when I go out, if someone wants to sell a property in New South Wales by December 15 to settle, they need to be doing that transaction probably no later than the 1st of November. In order for that to happen, 30 days on the market, that's the first week of October. In order for that to happen, they probably need to be listing maybe by the time they get to the middle of September. That's an example of something that happens every year. Easter varies, Christmas varies, different things are going on inside of your market and your cycle. Interest rates have kind of changed things. And then you've got elections. So when you've got elections, all of a sudden people come off. I've got elections happening in New Zealand right now, and I've got people saying, you can't list or sell a property during the course of an election, so you have to wait until the end of that at the end of October. And what you realise is a lot of it is excusitis, and a lot of it comes back down to not having the right narrative and not having the right planning. So Dean, when it comes to corporate calendar, do you keep a bit of a mood diary on what actually happens January, February, March, right the way through to December? Do you actually train that across your corporate team? And in addition to that, is there some really simple wins here that we can get to make it easier to plan and run a great business?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I definitely think this is about having a really clear sense of how the cycle works and just making sure that 6 to 8 weeks in advance of that cycle, you're keeping your team abreast of it, right? So, it's not, there's a lot of things exactly what you just mentioned, but there's a lot more too, right? We're in a market right now where we've seen a lot more stock come on, and in some markets it's still flying out the door, in other markets, but things have adjusted. I'm seeing agents that are highly capable agents in our business that had a listing coming on, or say a dozen listings coming on, and they appraised the property, before they went away on holidays. They've come back 3 weeks later. They've now run the campaign, and I'm clearly seeing there's a disconnect between the price they'd mentioned sort of however many weeks ago to where it's at now, right? So then you start interestingly looking into the markets and the stats, and you think, I'm seeing a lot more properties with days on market going up. In some markets, I'm seeing even some areas with 180 days on market grow. I'm like, wow, okay, geez, we're back into that cycle of, okay, you need to make sure that when you first list a property and you run your first open, whether it be your database open, you need to be back at the vendor's place that afternoon, resetting price based upon what you learned from the very first open, because you can't afford to leave it in the current market. But in other real estate cycles, people have been able to afford to leave it because hasn't been enough buyers, enough properties to sell, so people will going to pay, right? The flies. So you got to, just depending upon what's going on with demand and supply, also has a significant impact upon these sorts of things and how you deal with, and then it comes, okay, right now I'm saying to my team, you should be jumping on expires. Any listing that comes on, is chances it might, if it's not handled correctly by an agent who's not having the right conversation with their vendor, in 45 days, then that vendor and that agent are probably in a world of pain in their communication with each other. So there's different parts of the cycle you have to anticipate based upon what's happening with stock levels as well. So for me, your idea of a corporate calendar is really important because it really does underpin cash flow, right? Because a lot of people don't think about what they need to do for their cash flow. And even when you have new agents coming in and joining your teams, people always think, we'll start them in the new year. Well, I don't think so. I think I've seen it succeed so much better if it's in November, because they get inducted, they get on board, they get their pipeline converted, they get all their campaigns signed up, and they kick it off first cab off the rank in January. And that's going to be the best thing for their cash flow, as opposed to them coming coming in January, just getting their feet under the desk, they're making the phone calls, then getting their first listing, and then that's up and running in February, March, and then they don't sell it until after Easter, and then by the time they got paid, it's May. Like it's ridiculous when people don't think about those sorts of things. So
I feel like I've just triggered PTSD in you.
Yeah, no, but I see it,
and is that half the problem, that you don't write it down, so you keep on having to relearn the same lessons in a corporate calendar? Where you're seeing that all of a sudden that happens every year and you forget, and then you're reminded again, and that just, my goodness.
No, I don't think we forget. I think we've put in place even some little incentive programs at different times of the year because we know it's good. We want to ramp up auctions and things like that. So you go, okay, what are those incentives that we know will drive behaviour and drive awareness and get some fun in the joint? But it's also about going, this is the time to list auctions, for example. We run certain things like that throughout the year, and they're timed because of different lulls in the cycle that we know certain things need to happen. I also, think about lots of stuff, because this is all about, Josh, your point is you want a corporate calendar of these sorts of things because it's about keeping everyone in sync, right? Because if you've got only some parts of your business operating, in that high performance mindset and other parts are off the pace, you will feel it. And then you'll be turning around to deal with people that are struggling because they haven't planned appropriately. They haven't planned their holidays properly. They haven't thought about what's about to happen. So I think that, this is a really important topic because if you'll get better collaboration across your business, and if you've got really good communication about it, you just get much more focused time management, right? Much more focused time management and better organised people leads to better outcomes, right? And so we're constantly thinking about how do we improve the customer experience and our team's experience? How do we improve their productivity? And so then it's like, okay, well, at different times in the corporate calendar, we run a number of events with you, and we're like, okay, well, how do we maximize those? So at that time of the year, what's going to be the best way we're going to get outcomes that are going to drive for the next 90 days, right? So every 90 days, like, what's going to be the key focus areas that we need for you to drive in that communication, and then how do we support that in our own meetings and everything else? So syncing up your training in line with the calendar to know what's happening in different parts of the cycle is absolutely crucial to getting effectiveness in your business.
And the basic too, like I've got people that are going for a 5-week holiday in September, early October. That's the middle of spring.
Yeah.
Like guys, that's like a no holiday period for key revenue people. And it's like literally, well, hang on a second, who in my team have actually got families and who don't have families? And so that naturally, or their kids are growing up. And so school holidays are not as important versus the people who is like prime time. So then that way we're actually making sure that we're getting our people rested and renewed. And I always say that literally the back half of the year is a long 12-week cycle. And so if you're not really clear about what you're doing over that 12-week cycle, maybe a couple of long weekends here and there, or maybe the week over Melbourne Cup, you might duck away for 5 or 6 days. So then you come back in and you really push hard in that last little bit of November and into early December for January stock. That's a really smart idea. But people are actually in this position where they're constantly having to relearn these lessons because they just haven't written it down. Now, as a trainer, one of the key things that I'll pick up on themes, and there are definitely things that actually happen over that period of time, and just writing it down is the most important part. So when we actually go to plan out our year, we go, no, we don't do that then. We don't do events, for example, as a ticketed event in January or early February because everyone's already running all their kickstarts and doing all of those things. And so it's too hard to get people to go and spend money directly when all the credit card bills are coming in after all the Christmas stuff that actually happened. But yet, you know what? It's great in early March in New Zealand. And do you know why? Because there's a public holiday in Australia. So we go to New Zealand that's open. So it's like all these little things that we've learned over that period of time so that that's actually then built into a system of how we go to plan that year and plan 18 months in advance. Well, for the things that you can definitely get sorted. And then naturally you can move to more of the short-term plans that as conditions change and the turbulence hits, you as the pilot know how to get that plane smooth sailing.
Oh, yeah. And Josh, I encourage agents to say, look, every quarter, take a break. Like I think that people save up their holidays for this time of year, that time of year. Like they're contractors, they can sort of take whatever leave they want. But if they're smart, they probably take more leave than they think. But if you take some regular breaks, if you run a 90-day sprint, just think about things as make it simple. What's the key things for the 90 days ahead that I need to have organised this 90 days, right? And I can, and if you've got that organised, you can take a week off, right? Come back and then run hard again. Maybe a couple of days here and there. But it just helps you stay renewed and focused, so you know what your priorities are. But if you're just trying to run the whole year through and you just faltering your way through the cycle, you'll just be a victim of it, right? So you just need to be in control of your time and your focus. And there are some really clear basic things that you're talking about, and I've mentioned that people can do quite simply to make a big difference to their outcomes.
I know this sounds really basic. One of my guys, a fantastic agent by the name of Spencer Lawrence over in London, and he does this map about where people actually go and lease properties. And what he finds is that like literally people want to move in and out of properties somewhere between about maybe April and maybe the September period. But literally in October all the way through to April, very rarely do people want to move because there's snow and there's ice and it's rainy and dreary and all that sort of stuff. And so what he found is he had this whole leasing team sitting there for like 5 or 6 months of the year where they practically didn't have any leases to process. But yet he said, okay, great. What happens if I took them out of that role? Still left one person there, but I moved them over to helping them help the property managers with routines. So now we actually shifted the labor because we'd actually see where that's actually happening. And you know, it's such a smart idea about actually understanding where the demand periods are, what's peak, what's not, so that you can move the labor to where it needs to be and actually make sure that you've got a high level of efficiency around what it is that you do. So get back to planning, keep a bit of a mood diary, make sure it sits in one place. That's probably going to have a relationship with your HR team, probably with your events team, probably with your head of sales and your head of property management, and start to think about what do we need to do so we're really well planned as a business so we can execute with excellence in everything that we do.